Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we have a kind of a three-fer, I guess. It's going to be a review of these new watercolor sketchbooks. I also have a sale going on. It's a St. Patrick's Day sale going on through the 17th, which is St. Patrick's Day. 40% off any class in my online school. I will have links down below. Use the coupon code LUCKY and get 40% off, and all that information will be in the video description. So check that out if you've been waiting for a sale to buy a class. So what I want to talk about here are these really great little books. They are brand new from Artesia. They are a nicer quality watercolor paper than what they've had in the past, and I actually like their original watercolor paper for rubber stamping because one side is smooth and one side is rough, and it works really well with the real brush pens and other watercolor markers and watercolors. So I like those a lot. Those are very cheap. These are a little bit more expensive, but the quality is a lot better. So they come in three different sizes. This is a 5.5 by 3.5. This is the 5.5 by 8, and they've got a nice little closure, a linen cover, and I thought it's cute. There's also a little kind of if lost, return to, and you can put your address or your name in there, phone number. I love that. I also decided I would try the Artesia paint again, the watercolor again, and see how I got on with that. And the Artesia watercolors work really well with this paper as well. This paper reminds me so much of the Stillman & Birn Mixed Media Beta Series paper, so if you like that, you are probably going to enjoy this paper as well. The prices, there are more sheets in the smaller book, although they look about the same thickness. The larger book, you get a 2-pack for, I think, about $28 or $29. You get a 2-pack of this one for, let's see, this one like $20 or 19 or $20, and you get a 2-pack of this one for 15. So a little bit cheaper than the Stillman & Birn, and the quality is really good. So today I thought that we would paint this guy here. I was playing in the larger sketchbook and yesterday, and I kind of like that crocus too. If you want to see some of these other ones, let me know. I was playing with kind of translucent petals here. But we're going to paint this guy today because I did post the bunnies on Instagram, and I said, what do you guys think? You want to read a tutorial on either one of these? And the white one was definitely a favorite, so I'm going to set that one up ahead. Now, as far as the book sizes, I would recommend going with the medium or smaller size, just because the larger size pages, it's about a 90-pound, I'm trying to set that up in front of me and I just knocked stuff down. It's about a 90-pound paper. So actually it will say right here exactly what it is. It says it's 110 pound, 230 grams per square meter. It reminds me of a 90-pound watercolor paper. So, you know, it reminds me, if you like the Stillman & Birn paper or the Fabriano Venice book paper, that's about the same thickness. It's about the same thickness of the Jane Davenport watercolor journal as well. So if you've used one of those before, I think you'll have a good idea of what you're in for. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I will link up to a reference photo on Unsplash of a bunny, and we are going to kind of work from that. But we're going to add, you know, the flower crown and all that jazz. And I'm just going to use a mechanical pencil. I like to sketch right on my paper if I'm working in a sketchbook, because I feel that maybe we should, do you guys like to see the palette? Let me know. Do you rather see like the picture, even if it's a little bit smaller, and be able to see my mixing area? Or would you rather just see the picture? Because I could zoom in a little bit closer. I'll give you the palette today. Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to start off with a circle to kind of encompass the whole gesture of the bunny. It's kind of a circle that's flat on the bottom. Hopefully you can see that. Oh gosh, it might be a little light. And then I'm going to put a kind of a circle in here. It's almost like a squared off circle for the bunny's cheeks, face, jawline. I'm going to put a flopsy ear. Okay, I'm going to start to draw a little bit darker here. Got to give one of those puffy cheeks. The puffy cheek on the other side, get this flopsy ear, and oh my gosh, what a cute little bunny. So adorable. Looks like he's like reaching around and kind of like scratching his back or something. It's cute. And then we get a little dip up here. It's like they almost like these little pom-poms on the top of their head, kind of. Now we don't really see the eyes too much, but we do see kind of like a shadow where they are. And then we get this cute little nose. We just see the top of it because it's foreshortening, because the bunny has got his head tipped, so we just see a little bit of a foreshortening there. And we're just seeing a little bit of the shoulder. I'm going to not put as much shoulder as you see in the reference photo because it does look a little distorted. We got a little paw coming out from that side. We've got, because this is kind of like the leg, the back haunch. Okay. It's so fluffy and puffy though, you don't really see too much detail. We've got the back foot there. Got the little tuft of back fur fluff, and then we get the cottontail right here. Oh my gosh, cottontail is so cute. Oh, it's so cute. Oh my gosh, cottontail. I used to have bunnies. Bunnies are not, actually I had bunnies a lot growing up, but I never had cuddly bunnies. Like bunnies, they look like they would just love to be picked up and cuddled and snuggled, but I have never had a snuggly bunny. So I don't really know how snuggly bunnies are. So I'll see people like on the morning news, like from the adoption places, and they'll be holding bunnies in their laps and they look so snuggly, but that has not been my experience with bunnies. Luckily we lived in the country and we could raise bunnies if we wanted to. Okay, so that's a sketch. If you like, you can go in and lighten some lines. What I usually do is just use a soft white eraser. This one, it doesn't really matter the brand. You can get them at the dollar store even. Actually, this one, I'm not crazy about this one by Derwent because I feel like it has hard spots on it that don't like to erase. So, here's that. I'm not a big fan. I'm just lightening some lines. Some of the lines that I really don't need, like my construction lines, like the big circle that I threw that down there to begin with. And then what I like to do, and I think this makes a big difference, is to use a soft brush to brush off any crumbs, because that way you don't end up smearing or getting your hand oils all over your paper. Like if you wear lotion and stuff, you don't want to get that on your paper because it could create a resist with your watercolors. Okay, now I want you to grab a juicy brush. It doesn't have to be super big. Let's see, I'm going to use this one here by Royal & Langnickel. It's not really even that juicy. It's a number 6 round. It's a Taklon. Their Mentas are really good too, but this is a Menta All Media. The regular Menta watercolors are good too, but you know what? I don't have one up here. I don't have a round one up here, so I'm just going to use this one because it will hold enough water for a sketch this size. I feel like I might have abraded the paper a little bit there. I feel like I have some crumbs on there still. Well, I think we'll be fine. And I'm going to start by, I'm going to wet the paper. I'm going to just wet the area where the bunny is. You don't have to do this. You can just wet little areas and spread the color around. But this is kind of a hot press paper, I would say. They might even call it cold press, but I would definitely call this a hot press. Like the little illustration on the front, that looks like their 100% cotton watercolor paper, which is nice. They call it cold press double-sided. I find the front side is a little bit more textured, but it's definitely not that textured, and it doesn't have that that liney or laid quality that you see on some papers that I just don't like. It's definitely more of a natural, almost like a drawing paper type surface. It will take colored pencil quite well. I don't know about pastel. It's not really textured enough for pastel. I mean, for some highlights, it would be fine, but I wouldn't put a ton of pastel on it. Okay, but with this being a smoother surface, it will, your paper, I do find that, like, which usually hot press paper will want to kind of puddle and run a little bit, but I do find with this paper, it does grab the pigment a little bit better, so we can work on this all wet and wet and not have a big blob. I'm going to use this color. This is, what I did here was, I had the pan set, and I like the Artesia pans more than the tubes, to be honest, and then I put the tubes in pans in this set, and I realized that the pan set has more fashion colors, like more like, yeah, in colors, I would say. And then this is a 12 set of tubes, and then I've got a gorgeous ultramarine blue, I've got a gorgeous lemon yellow, I've got a gorgeous crimson. So I find these are actually more, the tube colors are a little bit more bright. And then the other ones are a little bit more fashion. So I'm using this kind of, I don't know if you call it an indigo or a Payne's gray. It definitely is quite blue. I'm going to use the burnt umber and the yellow ochre from the tubes. But, you know, use what you have. You don't have to have this brand of paint, but I just wanted to kind of show you what I did, and it really made the paint a lot more useful. They just released a set of 60 colors. Something I've noticed with Artesia is that over time, they do seem to improve their lines. So, like, at first I was like, I got the watercolors in the tubes, and they had pigment information and light fast information, and I love that, but I was not impressed with the quality of the paint. But I think I might have had my expectations a little higher because I've loved so much of their other stuff, like their gouache and their real brush pens. So I decided to give it another try, and I'm liking it a lot more. But I am kind of curious about their new set of 60 and if they have if they've improved the make of the paint, because they've done that with the colored pencils, the watercolor pencils, and other things, where like people would say, oh, I have a version of these and they're not that good, and then they get the newer version and they're like, oh wow, they totally improved that. So I'm going in first with the shadows because that's what I like to do. You don't have to. You can go in with your lighter colors first if you want, but I like to get those shadows in and cook in, because I feel that it takes a lot of the kind of scariness out if I can get those shadows in first. Now I'm going to go in with some yellow ochre, get my highlights. Maybe just a little smidgen of burnt umber in there. Their burnt umber is quite warm, unless I have the, I think this is burnt umber, not burnt sienna. They're both a warm color. They're both a warm brown, if you look there, but that burnt umber, I believe that's the burnt umber. Maybe they have burnt sienna and raw sienna. I don't remember. I just swatch them out and I go by what they look like. Quite frankly, when I'm painting, I find that you're much better to kind of learn color temperature and see what the colors are biased to. It's going to help you better for mixing, because different companies use different pigments, and if you can recognize the undertones of a color, you're going to be much more successful as a painter. I do like the way the colors spread on this paper. I can use a little bit of blue on their own, water it down a little bit, or I think it's an indigo. Could be a Payne's Gray. It's just whatever just make sure it's got a very cool cast to it. I can use that on its own to kind of show these areas that are away from the sun. Indigo want a little bit of that on its own. I like their tin an awful lot. It feels a little more sturdy than some others, especially in the budget lines. I think the tin of 36 it's under 40, I'm pretty sure. The tin is nice and sturdy, and I think they achieved that by just shortening it like 1/8 of an inch or something from a standard tin. It still fits everything, but it seems to make it a little more sturdy, which I do like that. Go light with your colors because you're painting a white bunny. So that's the thing to keep in mind. White is not white. When you're looking at a white object, you're seeing all these other colors that are influencing it. This burnt umber or burnt sienna, whatever it happens to be, has a lot of like red undertones in it. I'd probably, if you're working on another brand, I would say probably go with your burnt sienna because it's going to be a little bit warmer. If you need to neutralize the color, grab some of that burnt sienna indigo mix, because that will cool it down quite a bit. And I feel like this paper stays uniformly wet a lot better than a lot of the cellulose papers. This is a cellulose paper, but it does. I don't have any spots drying and giving me hard edges. Of course, this is a small area, but I just feel like it does a good job at keeping things uniform as I'm working. Now I've been looking at my sketches, I've been painting this, but I'm going back and looking at the reference photo because I'm afraid that I'll get a generation down. I want to make sure that I'm going back from that original photo just so I don't lose anything important. Get a little bit of darkness up here. When I painted this, it looked funny to like those fluffy kind of like pom-pom shapes that they have on the head. I was like, oh, that looks kind of weird, but oh, it'd be so cute with a little crown. And I just loved how illustrative it looked when I was done. So that's kind of where the crown came to be. I started by putting some foliage around the bunny. Notice how light the colors are. I'm not using a lot of pigment. I'm watering it down, and I just love the way it's reacting on the paper. I like that kind of like, I'm just going to bring it up a little bit more so you can see that. I just love the little textures that the pigment and the paper are making. It's I love that I don't see like a train track or tractor trailer, tire mark paper. Some like less expensive paper has that. Okay, so now while that's kind of drying and settling, I'm going to do a little bit of like shadow and whatnot on the ground. And I'm going to start by just grabbing some clean water. You can do this whole thing with a number 6 round. And I would suggest, like, this is a golden taklon brush, meaning that it is made with with synthetic bristles that are not super absorbent. They're absorbent enough for this size. I actually recommend these if you're using student grade paints and if you're a beginner, because with the brushes like this is a regular Menta, they're super absorbent. They will hold water like a sponge, and that could be a little frustrating, and they're also really soft. So these paints are all right, but if you had like paints that were really hard to get the pigment out, you could be, you know, really digging and digging and digging trying to get color out, and it can be very frustrating. So having a brush that's a little bit firmer, not, you know, stiff like a hog bristle that's going to damage your paper, but firm enough that you can go into your palette and you can easily retrieve your paint, makes a big difference. So I'm going to mix my brown and my indigo and make myself a little shadowy ground dirt color. And I have wet right up to the bunny, and I might get a little bit of blurring into the bunny, but I'm not too worried about it because the bunny's kind of like sunk into the ground a little bit. He's sitting in the grass, having a little bunny bath or scratching an itch or something. I'm going to bring a little bit of that ground around, give it a little setting so it's not just floating in white space. I'm going to do the same with some green. This green here is actually a pre-mixed green right from the Artesia pan set. It's a beautiful olive color. And see, that's where I want to show you. The 12 color set is what I have in tubes. The colors are much more high key, high saturation. So I think if you just have the pan sets, you may feel you'll get a more stylized, modern look to your illustrations, which a lot of people love, and I love that too. But I need the option of having those pure colors. So just kind of consider that. You don't have to have the Artesia brand of, you know, of your more high key colors, but I would definitely recommend that you have some colors in there that are going to be a little bit more saturated, so that you have that option. You can't brighten up a duller color, but you can dull down a bright one. And I can understand if you're a beginner and mixing makes you nervous, but it shouldn't. It's part of growing. It's part of learning, and it's really wonderful. It's wonderful when you mix that color that you want, and you've got that, you know, you've got that mastery over your media. So don't be afraid of it. Okay, now I'm going to see what kind of little grasses I can get with this number 6 round. I'm not sure if it's pointy enough. We'll give it a go though. And I'm just going to pull up some little grasses. I use my brush at a 90-degree angle with the paper anytime I want fine lines. I think I'm going to want to go in with a skinnier brush. Now, if you like an ultra round, I think it's Lowell Cornell makes the ultra round brushes. Those come to a really razor sharp point. But I don't have one up here at my table. This is my, I'm upstairs in my office painting today, and I don't have all my supplies up here. I just have kind of the you know, basics. And I'm just going to use this, I'm going to use this number 2 Da Vinci Nova. A little bit finer grasses here, and I am going into some of the wet areas because they will just kind of fade out, and that's all right. I like those lost and found edges in watercolor, and that's when you have a sharp edge, but then it fades away to nothing. But that's what gives watercolor that gorgeous ephemeral, no, not ephemeral, ethereal look. I'll pull some into the fur. I love seeing the edges go from blurred to crisp. I just think that's really pretty. And now for the little flowers, we're going to use some, I'm just going to go ahead and grab some mixed violet here. And what I'm going to do is just do little dabs in kind of like a circle shape, just little dabs. I'll do a couple with just that purple on its own. Now I can darken it. I can add a little bit of that indigo that we've been using all along, right in my purple mix. So do please let me know about the palette situation. Would you rather have the image I'm painting larger, or would you rather see, you know, and not see the palette, or do you like being able to see both? Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit of pink. Let's see, I think I'll use this darker pink here. I did mix it a little bit of the purple. Bunnies love clover. We had fields and fields of clover around our home growing up. with farmers nearby, and they would graze their cows in our pasture. I think they still do. My parents still live there. Lots of corn growing. You can put as many or as few flowers as you like. So now I'm going to see, oh, that is still wet. So I am going to, just going to see, actually, I might want to add a little bit more shadow before I dry it. So I'm just going to reconstitute the paint that's on my palette. Let's see if I have enough here. I think I need a little bit more of my indigo. Whatever you choose for paint, you should choose a paint that you're not afraid to use. Don't get something so precious. I mean, go with expensive artist quality paints if that's what you want, if that's what you want to paint with. But don't get something that you are that's so precious that you're afraid to use. So even though this is not fully dry, because it's drier than it was and I don't have a ton of water on my brush, I can still go in and get some of those crisp lines. I can even put a couple little toes on that front paw if I want to. It's as your paper dries, you'll notice you can get a little bit more detail. And if you need those really crisp lines, you do need to wait till it's completely dry, but you can kind of play with how blurry your lines are at different stages. Don't be afraid of values. Don't be afraid of shadow. I know it's kind of like, well, you've got the soft, fluffy bunny that we know is white, but if you look at that reference photo, you're going to see that those shadows are dark. Don't be afraid to put them in, because that's going to give you a more real. It's going to look white. It's going to give you a more realistic look. More of that. Whoops! I got some brown right there. And you'll build those skills. You'll build. You'll be able to tell how dark to have your paint and how wet to have your paper, but you've got to put the time in order to build those skills. If you get an edge that's too hard, you just go in with some water and you can soften that edge. Just don't be afraid to experiment. Now I'm actually at the point where I can put some like individual little hairs in if I want to, very, very lightly. Just make sure you're going with the direction of the fur. So if you're going to pat this bunny, how would the fur go? Make sure you're going in that direction, okay? You don't want to go against the grain. You don't want to go, you know, sideways. Just make sure that everything is agreeing with everything else in the sketch. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, you know, a photo. And, you know, don't be afraid of really muted colors. Like on my palette, look how muted that is. It's just a really, really pale, pale gray. Neutral colors are fine. Everything doesn't have to be super vibrant. It's only mud if it's not what you want, you know? The same color, a color that you might consider mud, if it's a color you want, it's not mud. It's the, you know, it's that neutral that you're looking for. Add water to lighten it. You know, we haven't used any opaque colors. We're using that white of the paper. If you lost too much of the white, you could always go in with a white color pencil or a white paint if you wanted to. I like how the indigo granulates. Actually, I like how a lot of the colors in here granulate. And that could be due to some fillers in the paint, probably. Could be due to the pigments that they used. I think it gives me that beautiful like watercolor illustration look that I am going for here. I've illustrated a couple children's books, and I just love that sweet little, you know, that sweet little illustration illustrative look. Alright, now I want to give a little bit more detail to the nose here. Just get those little kind of dimples on the side. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we're going to paint the floral crown here. And I'm going to start by getting that kind of pink, purpley color. And gosh, we didn't even have to dry it. Isn't that great? And I'm just going to dab on my little flowers. Just make sure that it's not puddly or too wet there, or you will end up with problems. I'm going to grab a little bit of purple for some of these, just drop a little bit in. And then I'm going to grab some sap green and just make some little lines and just some little strokes for leaves. And that's all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed this. If you want to learn more about watercolor painting, check out one of my classes. You can save 40% through St. Patrick's Day. Use the coupon code LUCKY. Links are in the video description. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up before you go. And until next time, happy crafting.